Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Alex.
And I'm Emma. So, Alex, quick question. Have you ever known exactly what you wanted to say in English, but when you opened your mouth, nothing came out?
Oh, absolutely. Or worse, you finally say something and it sounds so awkward that you just want to disappear. I think every language learner has been there.
Right. And here's the thing. Most people think the solution is more grammar drills or memorizing more vocabulary. But today, we're going to break down why that approach actually misses the point.
Because fluency isn't really about how much you know, it's about what's happening in your brain when you try to speak. We're going to look at the psychological barriers that freeze you up, and then give you some really practical techniques to work around them.
We'll talk about why less can actually be more when it comes to vocabulary, how to train your mouth to speak naturally without thinking, and a surprisingly simple practice method you can do completely alone.
And before we dive in, if you're listening to this and thinking, yes, this is exactly what I need, go ahead and hit subscribe to Speak Flow English. We make these episodes specifically for learners like you who want real, actionable strategies.
All right, let's start with the biggest obstacle that nobody talks about, the mental block that stops you from speaking even when you know the words. Okay, so here's something that might explain why you freeze up when you try to speak English, even though you've studied for years. There's this concept called the affective filter, and it's basically an invisible wall in your brain.
An invisible wall? That sounds dramatic. What do you mean?
It's from a linguist named Stephen Krashen. He discovered that things like anxiety, low self-confidence, and lack of motivation literally create a mental block that prevents language acquisition. It's not just in your head. It's a real psychological barrier that stops the English you know from coming out.
Wait, so you're saying stress actually blocks learning, like physically?
Precisely. When your filter is high, meaning you're anxious or stressed, the language input can't reach the part of your brain that processes language. But when you're relaxed and motivated, that filter drops, and suddenly the English flows much more naturally.
I tested this myself, actually. I tried learning some basic Portuguese phrases in 2 different situations. First time, I was in a quiet room, relaxed, just playing around with it. Second time, I tried to practice right before a presentation when I was already stressed about work.
And what happened?
Night and day difference. When I was relaxed, the words came out. I made mistakes, sure, but I could speak. When I was stressed, my mind went completely blank. I couldn't remember even the simplest phrases I just learned an hour before. It was like my brain just shut down.
That's the affective filter in action. And here's the thing. Most English learners are walking around with their filter cranked up to maximum. They're so worried about making mistakes, about sounding stupid, about getting the grammar wrong, that they can't access the English they already know. So it's not that they don't know enough English, it's that their anxiety is blocking them from using what they know. Correct. And there's another piece to this, something called over-monitoring. That's when you focus so much on grammar rules while you're speaking that it actually increases your anxiety and makes communication harder. Oh, I see this all the time. Someone starts to say something, then stops mid-sentence to think about whether they should use has or have, and by the time they figure it out, they've lost their train of thought completely. Right! They're trying to be perfect instead of trying to communicate, and that perfectionism is what keeps the filter high. So how do you lower this filter? Because I'm guessing you can't just tell yourself don't be anxious and have it magically work. You're absolutely right. It's not that simple, but there are practical ways to do it. First, you need to create low-stress speaking situations. That means practicing in environments where mistakes are okay, where nobody's judging you.
Like talking to yourself or recording voice messages instead of having live conversations.
Those are great starting points. The key is to remove the pressure. When you're alone, your filter naturally drops because there's no social anxiety. You're not worried about what someone else thinks.
What about when you do need to speak with other people? You can't avoid that forever.
True, but you can gradually build up to it. Start with people who are supportive, maybe other learners or friends who won't judge your mistakes. The research shows that learners with high motivation and low anxiety are better equipped for success because their filter stays low, letting language reach the brain's language center.
So it's about creating the right conditions, less pressure, more support, and focusing on communication rather than perfection.
Yes, and here's something I want listeners to really understand. Every time you speak English, even if you make mistakes, you're training your brain to lower that filter. The more you practice in low-stress situations, the easier it becomes to speak even when the stakes are higher. It's like exposure therapy in a way. You're teaching your brain that speaking English isn't dangerous. That's a great way to put it. Your brain treats social anxiety like a threat, and the affective filter is its defense mechanism. But when you repeatedly show your brain that speaking English is safe, that mistakes don't lead to disaster, the filter starts to come down naturally. Stop trying to be perfect, start trying to communicate, and practice in situations where you feel safe. That's how you lower the filter and let the English flow. Correct. And once you understand this, you realize that fluency isn't just about knowing more words or grammar rules. It's about managing your mental state while you speak.
All right, let's talk about something that's going to blow your mind if you're trying to learn English. I spent months analyzing language data, and here's what I found. You're probably wasting 80% of your effort learning words you'll almost never use.
Oh, this is one of my favorite optimization discoveries. The numbers are actually shocking when you see them laid out.
So here's the experiment I ran on myself. I tracked every conversation I had for 2 weeks. Work meetings, coffee chats, phone calls, everything. Then I analyzed which words actually came up. And the pattern was undeniable. The same words kept appearing over and over.
Right, and there's solid research backing this up. A study by Zeno and colleagues back in 1995 found that the most common 1,000 words make up approximately 85% of daily English conversations. Think about that. Just 1,000 words gets you 85% coverage. Which means if you're spending hours memorizing words like serendipitous or ubiquitous before you've mastered the top 1,000, you're optimizing the wrong thing. It's like trying to max out your retirement account while you still have credit card debt at 22% interest. Perfect analogy. And it gets even more extreme at the very top. The first 100 most common English words, we're talking about words like the, is, have, do, account for about 50% of all written and spoken English. Wait, pause on that. 100 words equals 50% of everything you'll ever say or read. That's insane ROI. If learning English were a business, those 100 words would be your core product line generating half your revenue.
And here's where it gets really practical. When you expand to the top 2,000 words, you're now covering between 95% and 99% of everyday spoken English. So the question becomes, why are so many learners trying to memorize 10,000 or 20,000 words? Because nobody told them about the 80-20 principle.
Look, I tested this myself. I made a list of the 1,000 most common words and forced myself to have entire conversations using only those words. And you know what? I could talk about almost anything. My job, my weekend plans, my opinions on movies.
That's the beauty of high-frequency vocabulary. These aren't just random common words. They're the building blocks. Words like get, make, take, go. They combine with other words to create hundreds of meanings.
Precisely. Get alone can mean receive, understand, become, arrive, buy, depending on context. So instead of learning 20 different fancy verbs, you master one versatile word and its combinations. That's leverage.
I actually ran a personal experiment with this. I spent 1 month only focusing on the top 1,000 words, really mastering them, understanding all their uses, practicing them in different contexts. Then I compared my speaking confidence to the previous month where I'd been trying to learn 50 new random words a week. And night and day difference. With the random words, I'd freeze up trying to remember them, and even when I did, they often didn't fit naturally. With the core 1,000, I could express almost any idea smoothly because those words were so deeply embedded. If you're an A2 or B1 learner, your number one priority shouldn't be expanding your vocabulary. It should be deepening your mastery of the words you already know. Can you use make in 10 different ways? Can you explain take to a 5-year-old? And here's the practical implementation. You can find lists of the most common 1,000 English words online. They're free, they're researched, they're ranked by frequency. Start there, not with a random vocabulary app that teaches you archipelago on day 3.
Right. And the mistake people make is they see a list of 1,000 words and think, oh, I already know most of these. But knowing a word and mastering it are completely different. Do you know all the phrasal verbs with get? Can you use way as a noun, adverb, and in idioms?
That's the depth versus breadth question. And the data is clear. For conversational fluency, depth wins. You're better off knowing 1,000 words at an expert level than 5,000 words at a surface level.
Imagine you're building a house. The top 1,000 words are your foundation, walls, and roof. Everything else, the fancy chandelier, the imported marble countertops,
That's the top 10,000 words. Sure, they're nice to have eventually, but if your foundation is shaky, who cares about the chandelier? And the beautiful thing is, once you have that solid foundation, adding new words becomes exponentially easier because you can define new words using words you already know deeply. You can understand context better. You can make educated guesses. So here's your action step if you're listening and thinking, okay, I'm convinced. Go find a frequency list of the top 1,000 English words. Print it out. Highlight the ones you can't use confidently in a sentence right now. That's your curriculum for the next month. And don't just memorize definitions. Use each word in 5 different sentences. Find it in songs, in movies, in conversations. Make it yours. That's how you go from knowing a word to owning it. Because here's the thing. Fluency isn't about knowing every word in the dictionary. It's about being able to express any idea with the words you have. And with the right 1,000 words, you can express almost anything. Which brings us to an interesting question. If vocabulary is about the 80-20 rule, what about the actual mechanics of speaking? Because knowing words is one thing, but getting them out of your mouth smoothly is another challenge entirely.
All right, so we've talked about why speaking practice matters more than grammar drills. But here's the thing. A lot of learners tell me they practice speaking, but they still sound robotic, like they're translating word by word in their head. There's this technique that completely changed how I approach pronunciation, and it's called shadowing.
Shadowing. I love this one because it sounds mysterious, but it's actually super simple. Emma, break it down. What is shadowing?
So imagine you're listening to a native English speaker. Could be a podcast, a YouTube video, whatever. Instead of just listening passively, you repeat what they say almost at the same time. We're talking milliseconds behind them. You're literally their shadow, mimicking their words, their rhythm, their intonation, everything.
Wait, so you're not pausing the audio and then repeating. You're doing it while they're still talking?
Yes, that's the key difference. Most people practice by listening to a sentence, pausing, then repeating. That's useful, but shadowing is different. You're training your mouth to move at the speed of natural conversation. It's like, think about learning to play the piano. You don't just read the notes and then play them slowly. At some point, you need to play along with the music at full speed.
That's a perfect analogy. And this is where the muscle memory thing comes in, right? Because when I first heard about shadowing, I thought, how is this different from just repeating? But it's not about your brain, it's about your mouth.
Correct. Your mouth muscles need to learn the physical movements of English, the tongue positions, the jaw movements, the way your lips shape certain sounds. When you shadow someone in real time, you're forcing your mouth to keep up. There's no time to overthink it. Your brain starts to automate the process.
It's like when you first learn to drive a car. At first, you're consciously thinking about every single movement. Check the mirror, turn the wheel, press the brake. But after a few months, you just drive. You don't think about it anymore. Your body knows what to do.
Perfect example. And there's actual research backing this up. Researchers at National Taiwan University studied English learners who used shadowing, and they found significant improvements in 3 key areas: intonation, fluency, and overall pronunciation. Not just 1 or 2, all 3.
That's impressive. So it's not just about sounding more native, it's about speaking more smoothly overall.
Yes, because when you shadow, you're not just copying words, you're copying the melody of English, the ups and downs, the stress patterns, the natural pauses. That's what makes someone sound fluid, not perfect grammar, but natural rhythm.
Okay, but I'm curious about the science here. Why does shadowing work better than traditional repetition? What's happening in the brain?
Great question. So there's this thing in your brain called the phonological loop. It's part of your working memory. When you shadow, you're activating this loop in a really intense way. You're hearing the sounds, processing them, and reproducing them almost simultaneously. This helps with something called proceduralization.
Proceduralization. That's a mouthful. What does that mean in normal human terms?
It means turning knowledge into automatic action. Like, you know the grammar rule for past tense, right? But when you're speaking, you don't want to stop and think, okay, this verb is irregular, so I need to say went instead of goed. You just want to say it automatically. Shadowing helps your brain skip the conscious thinking step and go straight to output. So it's literally training your brain to stop translating and just speak. That's huge. All right, I'm sold on the why, but how do you actually do this? Because I imagine if someone tries this for the first time, it's going to feel really awkward.
Oh, it's super awkward at first. I remember when I first tried shadowing with French, I sounded like a broken robot. But here's the step-by-step. First, find audio of a native speaker. Could be a podcast, a TED Talk, whatever. Start with something that's not too fast, maybe a clear, well-paced speaker. So not a rap song on your first try. Ha, no, save that for later. Second step, listen and repeat immediately. Don't wait for them to finish the sentence. Start repeating as soon as they start speaking. You'll be a few words behind, and that's okay. The goal is to stay as close as possible. And you're not looking at a transcript while you do this. Not at first. You want to train your ears, not your eyes. Later, you can use a transcript to check yourself, but in the beginning, just focus on the sounds. Third step, and this is the one people forget, match the emotion. If the speaker sounds excited, you sound excited. If they're calm, you're calm. Because intonation isn't just about pitch, it's about feeling.
That's such a good point. I've noticed that when I'm speaking English, if I'm nervous, I sound flat. But when I'm relaxed and actually engaged in the conversation, my intonation naturally improves. So you're saying shadowing trains that emotional connection to the language? Yes, you're not just mimicking sounds, you're mimicking the whole performance. And here's a pro tip. Start with just 30 seconds to 1 minute of audio. Don't try to shadow a 20-minute podcast on day one. Your brain will be exhausted. Build up gradually. So it's like interval training for your mouth. Short bursts of intense practice, then rest. I like that. And I'm guessing you can do this anywhere, like you don't need special equipment or a language partner. Nope, just your phone and some headphones. You can do it while walking, while cooking, even while commuting. The beauty of shadowing is that it's solo practice, but it feels like you're having a conversation. You're engaging with real English, not textbook English. And I bet this is way more interesting than repeating grammar exercises, because you're shadowing content you actually care about, whether that's a podcast about cooking or a YouTube video about travel or whatever. Yes, that's the optimization mindset right there. You're not just practicing English, you're learning about topics you love while improving your speaking. It's a 2-for-1 deal. All right, so let me summarize the shadowing method. Find native audio, repeat immediately without pausing, match the emotion, and start with short bursts. Do this consistently and your mouth will start to move at the speed of natural English. Am I missing anything? That's it. And one last thing. Don't worry about being perfect. You're going to stumble, you're going to miss words, and that's completely normal. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is to train your brain and mouth to work together automatically. Over time, you'll notice you're not just repeating, you're actually speaking. I love that, because so many learners get stuck in this perfectionist trap where they're afraid to speak unless every word is correct. But shadowing forces you to just go for it. There's no time to second-guess yourself.
Right.
And that's the mindset shift we need. Fluency isn't about being perfect, it's about being automatic. Shadowing is one of the fastest ways to get there. So if you're listening and you've been struggling with pronunciation or speaking speed, try shadowing for just 5 minutes today. Pick a short video, put on your headphones, and become someone's shadow. You might feel silly at first, but trust the process. Your mouth will thank you. Now, shadowing is amazing for rhythm and pronunciation, but there's another layer to fluency that most people completely overlook. It's not about how you sound, it's about how you think. And that's where our next technique comes in.
Okay, so here's something I've been doing for years that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but works incredibly well. I talk to myself, like constantly, when I'm doing the dishes, when I'm driving, when I'm walking the dog. I just narrate what I'm doing in English.
Wait, you mean like Alex is washing the dishes now. The water is too hot. He needs to add cold water.
Yes, and I know it sounds weird, but there's actual science behind this. Gary Lupian at the University of Wisconsin-Madison did a study showing that when you verbalize your thoughts, your brain organizes information faster and finds solutions more efficiently. It's not just random talking, it's your brain working better.
This is huge for language learners, because here's what's really happening. When you talk to yourself in English, you're forcing your brain to think in English. You're not translating anymore. You're not going from your native language to English in your head. You're just being in English.
And the best part? Zero judgment. Nobody's listening, nobody's correcting you. You can mess up as much as you want.
Right. And that's actually backed by research too. Studies on positive self-talk in EFL students show it increases both learner autonomy and self-confidence. You're literally building confidence in a completely safe environment.
So here's my challenge for listeners. Pick one daily activity, just one. Maybe it's making coffee in the morning, maybe it's getting dressed, maybe it's your commute. and just describe what you're doing out loud in English. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about sounding smart. Just talk.
And if you're worried about people thinking you're crazy, do it in the car or in the shower. Those are my two favorite places because nobody can hear you anyway.
Now, Emma, you mentioned something to me last week about the third-person trick. Can you explain that? Because when you first told me, I thought you were joking.
I was not joking. This is one of my favorite psychological hacks. Instead of saying, I need to practice English, you say, Emma needs to practice English. You talk to yourself using your own name, like you're coaching a friend. That sounds bizarre, but I'm guessing there's research on this too. There is. Research shows that talking to yourself in the third person is an effective way to regulate emotions and reduce anxiety during stressful tasks. It creates psychological distance. When you say, Emma can do this, it feels less scary than if I can do this, because you're treating yourself like someone you're helping, not someone you're judging.
Okay, I actually tried this before a presentation last month. I was in the bathroom mirror going, Alex, you've done this 100 times. Alex knows this material. And honestly, it worked. I felt way calmer.
See? And for English learners, this is perfect for those moments when you're about to speak and you feel that panic rising. Instead of, oh no, I'm going to mess up, you can say, okay, Maria can handle this conversation. Maria has practiced this before.
It's like you're being your own supportive friend instead of your own worst critic.
All of this self-talk, whether it's narrating your day or using the third-person trick, it's creating what I call a safe space for mistakes. You're building fluency without the fear of judgment.
This is the practice ground. This is where you test out new phrases, where you stumble over words, where you figure out how to say something before you need to say it to a real person.
And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. Your brain starts defaulting to English instead of translating. You start thinking faster. And when you finally do speak to someone, it's not your first time saying those words out loud, it's your 100th time.
So let me give you a practical example. Let's say you're cooking dinner. Instead of just cooking silently, you narrate. I'm chopping the onions. The knife is sharp. I need to be careful. Now I'm heating the pan. The oil is getting hot. Just simple sentences about what you're doing.
And if you mess up, who cares? Say it again. Try a different way. This is your laboratory. You're experimenting with the language without any consequences.
I think the biggest mindset shift here is realizing that talking to yourself isn't weird, it's strategic. You're not crazy, you're training.
Athletes visualize their performance before competitions. Musicians practice scales alone before concerts. This is the same thing. You're rehearsing English in a zero-pressure environment so that when the pressure's on, you're ready.
All right, so homework for this week, talk to yourself. Pick one daily activity and narrate it in English. And if you're feeling brave, try the third-person trick when you're nervous about speaking. Just once. See how it feels.
What happens when you're ready to move beyond talking to yourself? When you want to practice with real people, but you're still not confident enough for full conversations?
So here's what I keep coming back to, Emma. We started this conversation asking why learners freeze up even when they know the words. And what we've discovered is that fluency isn't really a language problem. It's a systems problem.
Right. It's like trying to run a marathon when your body's in fight or flight mode. Your brain already has the English, it just needs the right conditions to access it. Lower the stress, focus your practice, train the automatic pathways.
And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to fix everything at once. If I could give listeners just 3 experiments to try this week, here's what I'd say. First, find one 5-minute shadowing video and repeat it until your mouth feels comfortable with the rhythm. Not perfect, just comfortable.
Second, pick 20 words you already use in your native language every single day, like think, want, because, actually, and commit to owning them in English. Use them in 10 different sentences. Make them yours. And third, narrate one simple activity today in English. Making coffee, walking to work, doesn't matter. Just get your brain used to thinking in English without the pressure of another person listening. That's your safe practice ground.
You know what's wild? None of those require a textbook, a teacher, or even another person. They're all things you can start optimizing today, right now, with resources you already have. And that's the optimization mindset, right? We're not waiting for perfect conditions. We're testing, iterating, and building confidence through small, repeatable experiments. Fluency is just the compound interest of those daily micro-practices. I love that. So to everyone listening, your English is already better than you think it is. You just need to give your brain permission to use it. Lower the filter, focus your effort, and trust the process. The fluency you want, it's already inside you.
All right, we want to hear from you. What topic should we optimize next? Drop a comment and let us know what you're struggling with or curious about. And if this episode gave you even one idea to experiment with, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what we're testing next.
Until next time, keep experimenting, keep optimizing, and remember, progress over perfection, always.